Tensura. Of Bonds and Demon Lords by Ryagful. Rimuru. The kids, their new teacher and the Freedom Academy headmaster, were gathered outside the city walls. After shaking hands with the two adults, he turned to the kids. Alice and Ryota already had tears running down, while Kenta and Chloe looked like they were trying really hard to hold theirs back. Gale managed to not look like either, but he still had a sad look. Before they could say anything, he gathered them all up in a group hug, not bothering to say anything. After a few moments, they broke the hug, though Alice, Ryota and Chloe were still holding onto his coat. "Why? You'll come and visit, right?" Chloe said through tears. He gently patted her head. "Yeah, I promise," he said. However, she didn't look ready to let go. On a whim, he fished through his pocket and took out the mask Shizu left him. Before he left, he decided to leave each of the kids with a gift. A magisteel sword for Kenya. Cloths with enhanced defense for Ryota. His berserk power left him with low defense. A pair of gloves that would enhance bullet magic for Gale and a new, fireproof and electricity-proof, stuffed toy for Alice. However, he was kinda panicked about what to get for Chloe and was still raking his brain at the moment, but then he got the idea. "I want you to have this, Chloe," he said as he handed her the mask. He wasn't sure why, but he just had the feeling that she should have it, like it was just the natural thing. "Ah, not fair," Alice quickly complained, looking at Chloe taking the mask with envy. Now, you guys got gifts too," he said, "and I even got all of you your new uniforms, right?" Alice calmed down and nodded. "Okay then," he said as he began taking a few steps back. "Oh, and yes, I will visit sometimes. I'll definitely come to your graduation, okay?" he told them, "So be nice to Miss Tis, okay? If you do, I'll definitely invite you to my place sometimes, yeah?" Hearing that, they all looked over at him hopefully. He offered them one last smile before turning to walk down the road. A few minutes of walking, he was far away from the city to teleport back home in safety. He stopped by a large tree on the road and offered one last look back to the city, then activated the spell. However, nothing happened. He tried again. Warning. Wide area magical barrier interfering with spatial transfer spell. Connecting to points outside the barrier is no longer possible. Great Sage suddenly warned. What? Barrier? Rimuru suddenly thought in panic. Looking around, he could now feel the magicules in the air getting scarcer. As if water was draining from a sink. Is this the barrier's doing? Suddenly, he could feel a presence nearby. Sir Rimuru. It was Soy, looking a bit worse for wear. "Soy, what happened to you?" he asked as he rushed to his side. "This is merely a double. My real body is safe, so please do not be concerned with me," the ogre calmly said. "Please, you must be careful. Tempest has been attacked, and there is a powerful enemy near B." Before he could finish, however, the double vanished. Rimuru looked on at the place the double stood, shocked. His mind was running as fast as it could, trying to make sense of the warning. Tempest was attacked? Why? Who would? "Some people might notice you," the words of a certain Dragonoid suddenly came to mind. "Ah, damn it, now isn't the time. I need to focus in," as he was thinking that, however, he could feel another presence approaching. It wasn't yet in visual range, and the magic barrier prevented him from getting a good read of the direction, so he stood his ground and waited. Then, "Greetings." A feminine voice rang from behind. He turned around, though we will part ways quickly. Standing there was a woman with short, black hair wearing a paladin armor and uniform, with cold eyes staring at him. "Wait, I recognize her. That other student from Shu's vision." Thinking quickly, he said. "Ah, I'm sorry but you must be mistaken me for someone else. I'm Rimuru, an adventurer and," however, he was stopped by her drawing a sword. "I know exactly who you are, Chancellor of Monsters, Rimuru Tempest," she said coldly, "and I am here to eliminate you. Your nation is a nuisance, so we decided to eliminate it. And so," she said as she took a battle stance, "you must die too before you can return there." "Well, nice to meet you too, Hinata Sakaguchi, captain of the Holy Church Crusaders," he decided to say. "You are rather well informed for a monster," she retorted. "Well, what makes you say I'm a monster? I need to buy time. Ranga?" He tried to contact the Tempest Wolf, but came out empty. Warning. Because of the magic barrier, individual Ranga cannot use shadow movement. Furthermore, Thought communication is blocked. Great Sage informed. Shit. I know because we have an informant, Hinata replied. Informant? I've been in my human form, masked. Only a few people knew of my true self, so who? Well, enough talk. Shall we get started? Hinata coldly said. Wait. Rimuru shouted, I know Shizu and… I know, she replied, I know you killed her. I am also here for that personal reason. I am going to avenge her, she stated as she prepared to lash forward. Wait, listen to me, but it was too late. The Crusader launched at him with great speed, thrusting the sword straight at his neck. He barely managed to dodge the blow. Crap, why do I feel so heavy? He though as he rolled out of another swing, preparing to draw his own sword. Well dodged, she said as she followed him movements inside this anti-magic barrier. You monsters are greatly weakened, but you are still quite capable it seems. And lunged for another swing. This time, however, it grazed his forelimb as he moved to block. So this barrier is your doing after all? He asked as they exchanged a few more blows. Indeed. Hinata responded with another flurry of strikes, the Western Holy Church, most valued anti-magic barrier. Inside it, all magicules are purified, and monsters are greatly weakened. Another blow got through his defenses, gauging a wound on his shoulder. He jumped as hard as he could to gain some distance. Weaker monsters simply wither and die, but you're quite powerful, she said as she watched him trying to catch his breath. Your friend suffered grave injuries trying to stop my subordinates from erecting the field. Good thing for him it was just a double, she stated. It angers me to see a friend wounded, he told her with a wicked glare of his own. What would Shizu say to all of this? The woman you killed and stole your appearance from? She replied, voice dripping with anger. Before he knew it, she was again upon him with a wicked series of strikes, one of which wounded him across the chest. As he tried to escape, he suddenly felt a faint pain through his being. What is this? He wondered. Warning. Direct damage to spiritual body detected. Great Sage suddenly said. He wondered a bit what that meant. A realization hit him as he looked at her sword. Ah, it seems you noticed, Hinata said, sounding more calm but with eyes still full of anger. My sword is a specialized weapon that can damage spiritual beings. Combined with my ultimate technique, your demise is certain in 7 strikes. And lunged at him again. This time, he spared no punches to avoid another blow, pushing all of his energy into moving and parrying several of her swings. But even so another 3 got through. The sensation of pain shot through his body even more intensely. One more blow and you're done, she said as she watched him stumble in pain. But credit where credit is due. You are powerful. I can see how Shizu lost to you. I'm telling you, that's not it, he said through gritted teeth, but I guess you really don't care, huh? I am not dying here. Damn it. He though as he summoned a large fireball. While she easily avoided it, it was a ruse to buy time for something else. He summoned Ifrit, Shizu's former fire spirit, who was now under his command. He immediately split into several doubles and went in to attack, sending several walls of flame at her. Ifrit, huh? Hinata replied, sounding unimpressed as she easily deflected the flame. Rimuru grumbled as he planned out his next movement. Suddenly, Ifrit began to moan as if in pain. Huh? What is? Great Sage helpfully informed him, warning. Ifrit was under the effect of forced takeover. He looked at Hinata in realization. Were you trying to steal Ifrit from me? Hey, correct. She replied with a cold smile, with the unique skill, Usurper. Usurper. I wonder what that does. He thought, doesn't matter now. I need to do something drastic. One more hit and it's over. Then that should do it. Alright then. No more games. I'm going to go all out, he told her and began gathering a large amount of power for a last effort. One more hit and you're done, so why struggle? She asked. He smiled at her. Because I have people I want to see again. Someone I want to see smiling again, he told her as he finalized his last attack, and you won't get in the way of that. He shouted and dashed at her with extreme speed. We'll send them after you, so don't worry, she replied as she prepared a final strike. Die, monster, dead end rainbow. Wake up, gluttony, he shouted. The air around him exploded with energy. Even as Hinata's sword pierced him, the force was enough to crater the ground. A black mist expelled from him and took over her sword, forcing her to let it go and jump back. She watched as the black mist morphed into a mismatched monster with parts from the various creatures he had devoured. It snarled in a raw, primal roar. Incredible. You took the 7th hit, yet you're not dead. No, she said as she watched on as the monster lurched about. You are dead. Your soul is gone. The monster roared in her direction, prepared to destroy all in its path. How pitiful. Guess I should destroy you fully before you do any damage. She calmly stated and spread her hands wide and shouted, Spirit summons. 5 spirits materialized around her, then launched themselves to array around the monster. I offer this prayer unto God. She began chanting, heed my request. I seek the power of the spirits. A large magical array formed beneath the monster, with the 5 spirits at its edge. Hear my desire and grant it to me. Creation. Expend thyself. The array extended itself into several more above the monster, ethereal chains forming between them. Then finally, she shouted, disintegration. A massive pillar of light formed in between the arrays, engulfing everything within. The monster roared in pain as its entire being was ended in a flash, then nothing. Hinata Sakaguchi looked on at the charred ground where her opponent once stood. Not wishing to remain, she began walking away. I know you may not have wanted to be avenged, she said to the soul of her former sensei, but, even so, goodbye, and left. After a few more minutes, she was out of sight, and the barrier was gone. Ah! Rimuru mentally shouted to himself as he felt the barrier lifted. From his hiding spot in the tall grass, some distance away from the tree Soy had appeared, his slime form wobbled as the stress was finally gone. Oh dear God or whatever, it's finally over. He though, feeling like crying, talk about scary. Good thing I had this brilliant idea, but still, that was dangerous, if she suspected anything. Rimuru thanked his lucky stars that he had always been a somewhat paranoid individual. When Soei's double vanished and he could feel his strength leaving his body as Hinata approached, he began to panic. He could tell she was stronger than him, even without the barrier, and so fighting her would be beyond stupid. And so, an idea came to mind. He formed a double of himself, dumped most of his remaining energy into it, then left it there in his human form as she slithered away in his slime form to a safe place. Unlike Soei's doubles, this was a physical clone, and as such would not vanish from the anti-magic barrier nor could it be distinguished as a copy. He remotely controlled it with the soul corridor that he could naturally form with his clones, which thankfully was not cut by the barrier. And so, he somehow managed to live on. With the barrier gone, he quickly sent a message to Ranga. The Tempest Wolf jumped out of his shadow almost immediately. Master. He shouted, are you all right? I'm fine. Rimuru said as he took back his human form, I somehow managed to make do. How about you? Truth is, Master. I sensed something was wrong. The wolf said, I tried sending a message to Sir Benimaru but I could not make contact. Even now. What? Rimuru asked concerned, but the barrier is gone. Oh no. He realized, she said they want to take out Tempest, which means, he quickly tried to open a transfer point back to Tempest, but nothing, like before. Response. Suspecting that teleportation destination is cut off by a magical barrier, Great Sage responded. Like the one here? He though, means the attack already started. Great Sage, search for the closest functioning port, he ordered. After a few agonizingly long seconds, the sage responded. Notice, the port at the sealed cave is still functioning, it replied. Ranga, jump into my shadow. We need to hurry. Without a single complaint, the wolf merged into his shadow. A second later, he activated the spell and teleported away. The pedestal outside Veldora's cave shimmered to life. A small figure suddenly materialized on it, looking somewhat panicked. Good, it worked just fine. Rimuru said with some relief, I need to quickly get a picture of what is happening. He looked over in the direction of the city, and was stunned. Thanks to his magic sense, he could basically see it. A magical dome, shimmering in ethereal colors. Large enough to enclose the entire city. What is this? He though, then felt a familial presence behind him. Lord Rimuru. Gabiru was running towards him as he exited the cave. Vesta came behind him a moment later. Gabiru, Vesta. He said as calmly as he could, you're safe. What in the world is going on here? Sir, we're not sure. Gabiru quickly said, there was a commotion in the city some short time ago, but then we heard nothing. Commotion? Was it an attack? He asked. No, sir. Gabiru shook his head. From what I heard through the communication, some humans adventurers were making trouble. I don't know anything else on that matter, but… He suddenly got a very hesitant look on his face. He wanted to ask but… Sir Rimuru, he heard Soe's voice coming from the nearby forest. Turning around, he saw the ogre, along with Soka and a few others, landing in front of him. You're safe. Thank goodness, he said as he took a knee. Enough of that. What do you know? A number of human soldiers entered the city a few moments ago, shortly after the barrier got erected. They left after about 10 minutes. I don't know what happened inside. Nothing else. The ogre shook his head. Then we need to get going. Gabiru, what were you going to say earlier? He asked as he turned to the Dragonoid, who quickly avoided eye contact. It's just, not long before those adventurers showed up, we got an urgent message from Eurazania. Well, I don't know how to say this. He looked like he was tasked to tell someone their most important person died. Thankfully, Vesta stepped in, placing a hand on his colleague's shoulder. The dwarf turned to Rimuru and said, Miss Albaz asked us to help evacuate their civilians. It seems, Demon Lord Milam has declared war on Eurazania. His mind stopped working. A deafening silence set in as Vesta's words sunk in, and everyone around looked with great concern at their master, who simply stood there with a blank expression. What did you say? He said when his mind recovered enough to speak. He didn't say the words with any particular emotion, but it was enough to put everyone on edge. Milam, why? He asked no one in particular. I'm sorry, sir, but no one knows. Vesta replied as gently as he could. Miss Albaz said Lady Milam showed up and… However, before he could say anything else, Gabiru quickly grabbed his shoulder, signaling him to stop. He looked at Rimuru and quickly shut up. Rimuru had to stumble a step back as he tried to process everything that he was told. He was already feeling very stressed, but hearing that, his mind turned hazy. He wanted to rush off right that instant to find Milam and see what she was doing. However, no, I need to figure things out here first. As he managed to clear through the haze and get a grip on his heart. He noticed everyone around him looking in concern. Taking a deep breath, he turned to Vesta. We can deal with that after we get things here under control. He said as he resolved his will. The city takes priority. Soy, you guys come with me for now. Gabiru. He turned to the Dragonoid. I want you and your men to secure the cave. We may need to fall back to it. Vesta. See if you can contact Gazel. We may need to ask him for assistance. Get going. Yes, sir, everyone responded, then quickly turned to see to their duties. With Soy and his underlings in tow, Rimuru arrived to the edge of the barrier around the city. Moving carefully closer to it, he placed a hand on it. Great Sage, see what you can tell me, he ordered. Notice, low magicule density detected inside the barrier, estimated to be the result of an anti-magic field and a secondary barrier. The sage quickly informed. Anti-magic field? Like the one during my fight with Hinata? Rimuru asked. Negative. The properties are the same, but this one is a weaker version with a lesser purifying effect. The sage said, then added notice. A multi-layered defense barrier should protect against its effects. Alright, make it happen. Rimuru ordered. Once he felt the new barrier around him, he turned to Soy. Okay, looks like I can get inside. I'll deal with whoever placed the secondary field inside. You, Soka and the rest scout the forest and find those who placed the one on the outside. Take them out without killing them if you think you can win. If not, notify me of their location. We can deal with them in force late. Soy and his people nodded and quickly disappeared from view. He turned to the edge of the barrier and took a step through. He could feel the effect of the anti-magic field trying to overcome his new barrier. But thankfully it held, just like the sage had informed him. Once through, he quickly made a dash through the street to find some answers. As he was moving, he could see that the humans who left did not do so without doing some damage. All kinds of rubble was littered through the street, windows broken and a number of what he hoped were not blood stains. However, there were no bodies, thankfully. Were they Hinata's subordinates? He wondered as he moved, "It's really frustrating that she delayed me as much as she did, but since I lived anyway maybe I can still stop whatever she's planning." Ahead of him, he could see a large crowd of hobgoblins, including a very large and familiar one trying to calm them down. Ryagful immediately sensed his master approaching and made a run to greet him. "Lord Rimuru," he bellowed as he grabbed his shoulders. Neldan started sobbing. "I'm so glad to see you are well," he said through tears. "It's fine, calm down," he said. He then noticed Kaijin approaching. As the dwarf came closer, Ryagful managed to calm down and began to talk coherently. "I'm sorry. Lord Rimuru, I have a report. If you would follow me." However, Rimuru could feel something was wrong. "Ryagful, what's wrong?" he asked, but the hobgoblin looked extremely hesitant to say. Before he could ask again, a loud boom echoed through the city. He turned in the direction of the explosion and saw a large black cloud erupting skywards from behind some buildings nearby. Before Ryagful could protest, he made a run for it. As he turned a corner into the alley the explosion came from, he saw a small crowd gathered, including Geld and Benimaru. In front of Benimaru was the lycanthrope Grucius, looking like he had barely survived a point-blank fire attack from Benimaru. He was wobbling, but alive and defiant. Behind him, he could barely make out the form of Yom, looking extremely injured as was laid down on the pavement, held by a woman. He searched his memories and remembered she was that new party member that had come with Yom's group before he left, the Majin pretending to be human. As he approached, he could hear Grucius and Benimaru argue. "I won't let you have her," Grucius said through gritted teeth, looking ready to die. "You guys are not thinking straight. She's our main suspect. Move," Benimaru said calmly but with a clear hint of anger. Before he could do anything, Benimaru struck Grucius faster than human eyes could see. The beastman crumbled onto the ground. "I apologize to you both, but she must answer my questions," and moved to apprehend the woman. "Benimaru, stop." Rimuru wasn't sure what was going on, but he felt that he had to intervene immediately before the ogre did something he would regret. Everyone in the alley quickly turned to look at him. "Lord Rimuru," Benimaru said in shock, then approached him. "Benimaru, what is going on here?" he asked. The ogre turned to look at the woman and Yom, then with a heavy sigh turned back and began explaining. "Sir, this woman, Majulan," he said, indicating the Majin woman, "we believe responsible for the barrier placed around the city. For some reason, both Yom and Grucius interfered and defended her when we tried to capture her," he said. As Rimuru looked at the woman, who was looking at him with a sorrowful gaze, the ogre continued, "There was an attack, a group of about 100 human knights. It would hardly be a problem, normally, but with the barrier." He suddenly stopped, looking hesitant and averting his eyes when Rimuru turned at him. Rimuru had enough. "Why is everyone so hesitant to tell me the bad news?" he said through a sigh. "Just give it to me. Now," he added a bit more forcefully. "Do you really wish to know?" The woman suddenly spoke up. He turned at her and noticed her sorrowful look had turned into one of guilt. He nodded. The woman, Majulan, gently placed Yom's head on the ground and got up slowly. "Wait," Yom said weakly, "please." From where he was sitting, Grucius too looked to be in a panic to stop her. "It's okay," she said with a small, sad smile, "I will not run away," and moved away, motioning Rimuru to follow. He too motioned the ogre to bring Yom and Grucius with them, then began walking behind Majulan. After a minute of walking, he realized she had led them into the town square. She stopped and stepped aside, allowing him to get a good look at what she had led them to. About 100 of them, bodies. Bloodied, tattered, unmoving bodies. Dead, every last one, including children. He looked onto the scene, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. Are they? His mind tried to work, but it felt heavy and painful just thinking, dead. It hurt to even think up the word. The attackers disguised themselves among the merchants. He heard one of the hobgoblins' lords say behind him, "We treated them with respect and fairness, as you instructed us to do to humans and everyone else, but to think." "Be silent," Ryagful suddenly said. The hobgoblin quickly realized what he said and covered his mouth in shock. I'm so sorry, my lord," he tried to say, but Rimuru would not hear it. "No, it's fine," he said softly, "it's fine." He thought back to the time he had become the protector of the goblins. "I want you all to follow 3 simple rules. no infighting, no looking down on others, and finally, do not attack humans. Understood, he had told them. It's because you obeyed my rules, he said aloud, ignoring the protests of the crowd. It's my fault, he said, not wanting to hear anything else. I did this, he thought as he looked over the field of carefully placed bodies of the people who entrusted him with their lives. I did this. In the great mountains of Fulbrosia, in the capital of Jaw, a great disaster nearly took place one day. Everyone for miles was suddenly onset by a massive, soul-crushing pressure. The ones too weak to resist it simply fainted, but those who did resist it wished they did not, for it simply caused them greater discomfort. The pressure was emanating from within the royal palace belonging to Queen Frey, from one of her guests' rooms. Inside were two people. One was Frey, trying very hard to stay on her feet so close to the source. The other, from which the pressure was coming from, was Milam Nava, looking like a raging storm, face contorted in indescribable rage. I will kill them all, she shouted, her voice reverberated with power unlike anything Frey had ever sensed before in her entire existence. The Sky Queen had always knew, ever since first meeting the seemingly childlike demon lord, that she could not ever hope to even compare herself with her. The gap was so ludicrous, so overwhelming, that it was madness to even think she could. Even so, she now realized something far worse. The power she though Milam had was but a drop in the ocean to what she actually had. The gap between them was beyond even what she imagined, incomprehensible. And now, she was staring it right in its face. She knew when she heard from Clayman that nothing good would happen, but even so she felt it was her duty to tell the girl about the attack on Rimuru and Tempest. The result was now obvious. Milam was furious. She was waiting in her guest room in Frey's castle and doing her best to fulfill her promise, when Frey came in, looking very, very unnerved. Scared, even. And then she told her that Clayman, or rather, the one they suspected to be working with Clayman, had orchestrated an attack on Rimuru. From what Clayman knew, the slime was already dead. Hearing that, Milam's heart froze over with grief. An image of a dead dragon flashed in her mind, and the ice was replaced with a burning, searing anger. A second later, she could feel herself losing control, but she did not care. She though about the slime in Tempest, all the fun they had, the warm welcoming she was given, how Rimuru had told her that he loved her. In over 2,000 years, no one before had ever said that to her. Until that quiet moment on the roof, and now, Frey told her that he was gone. For 2,000 years, she tried very hard to keep her rage in check. Despite what some said about her, the fact was she had always held back more than they would ever understand. Afraid of what she would do if she didn't. Afraid of herself. And now, hearing what the harpy said, she could feel her control slipping and she just didn't care. She was looking forward to letting go and turning those responsible to ash. She felt as her aura began crushing everything around her, cracking the walls and floor and tears flowing down her cheeks, but as she looked over at Frey, who was barely able to still stay conscious, she felt another distant memory, and began bringing her aura back into her body. Frey wobbled on her feet as she looked at Milam, who was crying and had a guilty look on her face. Realizing just how much pain she must have been in, she ignored her own body's screams of protest and moved forward until she was right in front of her. Milam, somewhat confused, continued to look at her. Suddenly, Frey brought her into a hug. In a flash, the aura and pressure vanished. I'm sorry, Milam said through sobs. I didn't mean to, she tried to say, but Frey just held her tighter. It's okay, she said softly, you don't need to be sorry. Hearing that, Milam lost most of what composure she had left and cried into her chest. I can't lose him too, she barely managed to get the words out through her tears. Frey didn't ask what "to" meant. She didn't want to make her recall even more sad memories up. I can't. Milam tried to continue, but all she could do was keep crying. Milam, listen to me, Frey said as she grabbed her shoulders and looked her in the eyes. Listen. Milam seemingly calmed down just enough to listen, so she continued. Rimuru loves you, right? She asked. Milam blinked some tears away, thinking. That's what he said, she answered, breathing a bit heavy. He said. Then you have to believe in him. Frey continued with a firm voice, that he would not die and abandon you so easily. Milam listened to what the harpy said, and her heart, though just a bit, stopped hurting. She nodded.
I believe, she eventually said. I do, but. Frey brought her back into a hug.
I know, she said to Milam, but just hold on to that belief. Milam nodded. She nodded and resolved her heart. She would see Rimuru again, she was convinced of that, and she would never let him go, ever. She would hold on to him and together they would be happy. And anyone who got in the way of that would suffer before they died. I did this, was all that could be heard in Rimuru's mind for what felt like an eternity. I did this. He ignored all the calls of the others trying to divert blame from him, but he refused. He decided he would embrace his guilt. This is my doing. A voice broke through his dazzled, guilt-ridden mind. He turned to the source, Mulan, who continued, if I had not used my anti-magic field, none of this would have happened.
She said. Hearing that, Rimuru could feel something other than guilt rise up within him, rage. A dark shadow fell over his face and many in the nearby crowd had to take a step back as a surge of magicules erupted around him. Majulan, however, looked perfectly calm, continuing to look at him. He realized she had resigned herself to whatever fate he had in store for her. He extended his right arm towards her.
Wait, boss. He could hear Yam protest, being held back by one of his men. Listen, please. However, as much as he wanted to, he could not listen. His body continued to move. He gathered some magicules in his palm. Notice. He was suddenly stopped by the great sage's voice resounding in his mind, estimated that the barrier placed outside the town had a far greater effect than the one placed inside by individual Mulan. It said. With a sudden realization, he stopped. The overflowing aura vanished, as did the rage penetrating his mind. Calm down. She was trying to goad me into killing her. She was trying to prevent blame from landing on Yam and Grucius for protecting her. Why? Was it? His own mind suddenly flashed a picture of a certain red-haired girl with a wide smile. Ah, I see. As he looked between Mulan, Yam and Grucius. No way he could be mad now. Annoyed, yes, but now that he had a better grasp on what was going on, he at least could understand where they stood. He sighed. That was close. He said, Mulan, was it? I will deal with you later. I am placing you under house arrest. He said as he turned to Yam and Grucius, you too. I promise to be fair. He told them. They looked worried, but also trusting. A group of hobgoblin wold riders began escorting the three away to Mulan's room. As they were leaving, he turned to the counselors present in the square. Okay, I want a detailed report. No holding back for my sake, got it? He said, and they looked only to reluctantly agree. Then, may I join? A familiar voice said. He turned around and saw that it was Mjalmail, the merchant he had recruited in Brummond and saved in Ingrasha from a dragon. Ah, I see you're here too, Mjalmail. He told the man through a forced smile. Bit of a bad time to be doing shopping, I'm afraid, he tried to joke. For his part, the merchant offered a weak smile. Hey, even a dragon could not scare me away from a good deal, Sir Rimuru. Mjalmail joked back, but I guess this is different. He said as he cast a glance at the rows of bodies. In any case, I had recently been elected to represent the human merchants that you allowed to do business here. I would like to be present to your talks, maybe offer a different view on what happened. Hearing that, Rimuru cast his gaze at a number of human assembled some distance behind Mjalmail, a collection of adventurers and merchants. Okay, follow me, he said. Once they had all moved into his office, Benimaru began explaining what had transpired before Rimuru's arrival. Earlier that day, a group of 3 travelers, 2 men and a woman, arrived in the city in a small caravan of merchants. Once inside the city, the woman accused Gobza, one of Gobta's underlings, of having harassed her, even trying to use a unique skill to incite the people around her. However, Shuna used her own skill to cancel hers out, at which point the 2 men joined in and from there it escalated into a fight between them, Shion and Hakuro. Then the 2 barriers were erected, and about 100 royal knights from the nearby kingdom of Falmouth stormed into the city. Upon seeing the monsters fighting the 3 humans, the leader of the knights shouted about how they came to investigate the nation of monsters only to find innocent humans being assaulted, then began cutting down everything in their path, sparing no one, not even children. As they left, he announced that an army of Falmouth and the Western Holy Church will arrive within 1 week to subjugate the city. Apparently, the king of Falmouth himself, Kind Edmaris, will be leading it. Then they left. What a joke! Rimuru said as Benimaru finished his report. This was obviously a setup. If their army is just a week away from us, they had already decided on invading us for a while. Those three must have been their agents, trying to make up an excuse. Yes, I believe so too, Shuna said from behind him. As he turned to look at her, she continued, based on their unique skills, they were likely otherworlders, she explained. Otherworlders, huh? Rimuru said lowly. That makes little difference to us. In any case, while I understand the church's position, what I don't quite get is why Falmouth gains from this. If I may. Mjolnir said, their reason is part of what I wanted to talk about, he said as he stepped forward from where he was standing.
Go ahead, Mjolnir, Rimuru said. Right, you see, Falmouth has always been a prosperous trading hub, especially between the armed nation of Dworgen and the other western nations.
The Jura forests has always been too dangerous with all the monsters roaming about, and the northern sea route is even worse. Going through Falmouth was the only viable way for the majority of western merchants. Taxation of those merchants made the kingdom rich, but,
he continued as everyone in the room gave his their full attention, with the rise of Tempest, that is no longer the case. You pacified the forest, built a road for easy access, the new trade route is safer, quicker and with much lower taxes. Falmouth will lose out massively in the long run, they see you as a rival, though I imagine they would rather subjugate you than eliminate you, he finished his explanation, looking around to see everyone's reaction.
Rimuru carefully considered Mjolnir's explanation. So this whole thing is just greed? He said with barley-contained disgust and anger. I see. I never intended to run roughshod with the arrangements of neighbors, but I am just an amateur at this stuff. I suppose this really is my fault. I'm afraid so, the merchant said, but please, do not misunderstand, Sir Rimuru. Huh? Rimuru looked at him confused. I was merely describing the background that informs Falmouth's motives. I wasn't trying to make judgment of their actions. He explained, first of all, it's rather strange that they did not run this through the Council of the West. As you said, the first three humans were likely saboteurs, intended to stir up a motive they can sell to the general public. In any case, right now, I stand before you representing the human merchants, traders and adventurers staying in the city. We are all in agreement. We will stand with you against Falmouth, he said with conviction as the other humans assembled behind him nodded in agreement. Weapons, supplies, we will provide with whatever we can. I'm an adventurer from Bloomend, one of the adventurers said as he took a step forward. This city has been my base of operations for some time. If you take me, I will join your fight. Me too, and me, a number of adventurers shouted. Rimuru looked at them in appreciation. That's comforting. He though, however. While your offers are very much appreciated, he said as he stood in front of the gathered humans, I will have to decline.
Thank you very much for your offer, he said with a small bow, but we need to take care of this ourselves. Besides which, if something were to happen to any of you, Falmouth and the church would just use it as an example to stir up people against us. He explained to them. Though they did not seem to like that idea, they also nodded in understanding. There is something you can do for me, though.
Anything you want, boss. Mjolnir said. Thank you. Basically, I want you to return home and support our side of the story if it comes down to it. Do you think you can do that? The humans nodded one by one in agreement. Thank you. Now, please gather your things and meet me in the central square. I will send you off with a spell. Send us off with magic. Why not just walk? One of the merchants asked, but was interrupted by the first adventurer to offer help. We are unnecessary witnesses, that's why. He said in realization, Falmouth probably has those troops that attacked watching the road leading west. They would not hesitate to kill us, would they? He asked no one in particular. Most seemed to grasp the meaning of his words quickly though, looks of disgust clear on their faces. Rimuru nodded. Indeed. Rimuru agreed. I doubt they actually give a damn about other humans. They'll kill you all with no remorse. That's why, I will send you off myself. A little time later, in the town square, he opened up a teleportation port to Bloomend for all the humans to use. Mjolnir was the last to leave, saying he would get word of what really went on in Tempest to all who would listen. As the portal closed, he had Rigard take him to the injured. Both Gavta and Hakuro were among those that were gravely injured but survived. As he entered, he saw them both lying on beds, bleeding heavily. Shuna had left his office to continue helping out with and greeted him there. As he stepped closer to the two, she said, "One of the three humans had a spatial type skill. Healing spells and even our full potions have no effect." Rimuru approached Hikuro and placed a hand on his shoulder. After some brainstorming, he had an idea. "Great sage. Can I use gluttony to consume the effects of the spatial kill?" Confirmed, the sage informed. A second later, a black mist surrounded the old ogre. A second later, his wounds were healed. He had placed some of his own full potion while using gluttony. "My thanks, Sir Rimuru," Hikuro said. While Rimuru went to heal Gavta too, the ogre continued, "Though it shames me to have ended up in such state." "Don't worry about it," Rimuru said as he healed Gavta. "It wasn't your fault." With a jolt, Gavta woke up, patting himself to check for injuries. Then he was stupid enough to call Hikuro an old geezer. Predictably, he almost ended up requiring more healing. Rimuru and Shuna stood on the side, snickering. "What troublemakers," he said jokingly. Speaking of troublemaker, anyone seen Shion around? She wasn't. His words were interrupted by a heavy atmosphere that descended on the room. He looked around at everyone, avoiding eye contact. "Guys?" he asked, sounding more like a lost child than the leader of a monster nation. "Benimaru. Where is she?" The ogre said nothing and merely motioned for him to follow. As he did so outside the building and through the town, a feeling of dread assaulted him. Then it turned to despair as he stopped in front of the rows of dead. There was a body covered by a bloodied sheet. Then Benimaru lifted the blanket, and standing there was a dead Shion. His mind once again could not work properly. Why is she here? Gobzo, he could hear Gavta shout in despair nearby. He was kneeling and crying next to the lifeless body of the goblin rider in question. Hikuro moved to place a comforting hand on his student's shoulder. "I heard she was protecting a child from the attackers when the barrier was placed." Gobzo tried protecting her, but Benimaru could not finish his sentence. A massive aura erupted from Rimuru, one filled with anger and sorrow, that nearly swept everyone nearby of their feet. However, it was gone in a second. Then, as if out of battery, Rimuru collapsed down on his knees in front of Shion's body. "I would like to be alone for now," he said in a barely audible voice. The gathered crowd obeyed his wish and began to scatter. Before she did so too, Shuna came from behind and hugged him, then left too. However, his mind did not even register any of that. All he could think of were the dead in front of him. After a while, he could feel the sorrow threatening to spill out again. He ordered the great sage form a copy of Shizu's mask to suppress his aura. However, as he placed it on his face, it cracked from the pressure. Why did things came to this? What did I do wrong? What should I do now? Those questions raced through his mind at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Unable to answer was all great sage could tell him. And why haven't I shed a single tear? He finally asked through the sea of emotions. "Oh, I see." He realized, "I truly became a monster, haven't I?" His mind crippled with pain, he sat there, unmoving, for 2 days. A cold wind blew through the city as its leader sat under the starry night, alone with but the bodies of his dead subjects. Notice: no search results returned. No magic found on the resurrection of the fully deceased. Great Sage said in his mind. He had ordered it to go through all the books and scrolls he had copied in Ingrasha, which took even the sage many hours to do. However, it was futile. "I see," he said as he looked at Shion's unmoving face. As he sat there for a little while longer, it though occurred to him, "I can't just let them stay here forever. Eventually, their bodies will decompose and be returned to its base magicules, lost forever. I can't allow that." He stood up with determination and extended his arm forward. A faint black sphere appeared in his hand and extended in a cloud around him. "Gluttony," he ordered his skill to prepare itself. "At least, they will find peace within me, and prepared to consume them." However, loud footsteps and a voice interrupted. "Wait, Rimuru." He turned around to see Uren, Kaval and Guido, the trio adventurers who escorted him to Ingrasha, looking like they rushed there all the way from Blumend. "You guys came?" he asked, astonished. "Thank you. But, please wait just a second," and turned to continue what he started. "Wait, there is something I need to tell you." Uren screamed. "I know the changes are low,
but when I heard what happened, I knew I had to tell you. She said, there may be a way to save them.
Stop it. He though as he heard her words, don't give me false hope, don't. Is there even such hope? For them? He though as he looked over the rows of the dead, a realization hitting him. No, it's for me. I am the one. Who doesn't want to lose them? And with that, a new determination took hold of his soul. Letting go of gluttony, he let out a forced laugh, ha ha ha, resurrecting the dead. He asked Eren as he turned to her fully, taking off his mask. Yes, she said, it's a fairy tale from my homeland. It may sound made up, but it is based on historical fact. Homeland? He asked, confused at that. Eren had a look of hesitation and her companion's one of worry. However, it was gone quickly, replaced by determination. Yes. You see, she said as she moved her hands up to her ears and cast a spell. Suddenly, her ears grew pointier. He asked even more confused, you're an elf? He nearly shouted. Ha ha. She laughed, somewhat embarrassed. Both Kaval and Guido sighed. Yes, as you can see, I'm an elf, originating from the sorceress dynasty of Thalion, the Elven Empire. He remembered briefly passing through Thalion when he went to see Ramirez. The tale I wanted to share is a famous one that is told within the dynasty's nobility. The story of a girl and a dragon. The tale of the dragon princess. A long time ago, there were only 4 dragons, the incarnation of power itself. The oldest of these dragons was powerful beyond measure, roaming the land as he pleased. One day, he met a young human woman, and the two spent time together and eventually fell in love. After a while, the dragon took human form and the two married. Not long after, they had a child, a girl that was said to have inherited her mother's beauty and her father's great power. The dragon himself lost almost all his power to his own child and was now fully human. He crystallized what remained into a baby dragon that he gifted to the girl to be her guardian and friend. Then, both he and the human woman mysteriously vanished from the world, leaving their child behind. With her dragon companion, the girl grew up in safety, unaware of the great power that resided within her. The two though their happy days would continue forever, but it was not to be so. One day, tragedy struck as a nearby large, magic-wielding kingdom learned of the dragon princess and her great power and sought to control her for themselves. They attacked her home, and in the process the baby dragon was killed. The princess wept and lamented over her only friend, but soon that grief turned to rage. Awakening to her true power, she laid the kingdom to waste, sparing nothing in her path as wrath was now all she knew. In the process, however, she had also awakened as a demon lord, only the second individual to do so, and now the world itself became a target of her fury. However, the first of the demon lords, sensing her wrath, stepped in to stop her. Their battle lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, turning the entire western edge of the continent into a blasted wasteland. But even so the wrath of the dragon princess could not be quenched. Only the intervention of the Spirit Queen, who absorbed some of her runaway negative energy, managed to finally calm her mind and allow her to regain her sanity. As she cried over the loss of her friend, the Demon Lord and Spirit Queen looked on with great sadness. The Demon Lord, his heart deep and calm as the sea. The Spirit Queen, her embrace like the gentle breeze. Then, a miracle occurred. The baby dragon rose up from its death, brought back to life by the princess's awakening as a Demon Lord. However, miracles do not always take a form that people want. The baby dragon, though its body moved, its soul had long since departed. It was now nothing but a mindless husk, transforming into the sinister Chaos Dragon. The Chaos Dragon, its power rivaling even the first Demon Lord, knew nothing but the fury its master was in when she awakened, and thus began to move to continue destroying everything, just like the Dragon Princess had before. Watching her friend, the Dragon Princess was the only one who understood that her friend was no more, and the true extent of her own power. Thus by her own hand, the princess sealed away her only friend's body, eyes full of kindness that made even the Demon Lord and Spirit Queen silent. This became the Dragon Princess's first great act as a Demon Lord. Lives lost cannot be reclaimed, important things do not last forever, that is the rule of the world. All things must end one day, and people must stand on their own 2 feet, like the Dragon Princess when she overcame the loss of her friend and came to know her power.
Eren finished telling the story and looked at Rimuru to see what he had to say. Both her and her companions had to take a double take, though. Listening to Eren talk about the ascension of the Dragon Princess to Demon Lord, he began to realize exactly what Eren was proposing, but as he considered the idea something else came to mind. Wait just a bit. Dragon Princess. Daughter of a dragon, who became a demon lord. As he though that, a somber realization hit his heart. Ah, I see, so that's your story, Milam. He remembered some things she had said. Why did I became a demon lord? Maybe, something bad happened, and I was angry. Ah, I don't remember. Okay. Aren't you scared? Me too. I'm scared too. Lose. Some people might notice you, they'd take it away. As he though back to those things she said, he also remembered the sad expressions she would occasionally make, when she though he or anyone else weren't looking. He always hated those, he though being happy was much better suited for her. His already heavy heart could cope no longer. He felt a tear run down his cheek as he looked up at the night sky, ignoring the calls of concern of the three adventurers. Milam, what are you doing right now? He though, again wanting to leave right then and there to find her, but he remembered the part of the story where the princess steeled her heart to seal away the Chaos Dragon, the only friend she ever had. How would he be able to meet her again if he ran away from his own problems? And so, with a newfound determination, he wiped away his tear feeling thankful that he could, indeed, still cry and turned to Eren. Never mind me, he told her as she looked at him with concern, but, basically what you're saying is that I became a demon lord, the dead people here might revive. He looked at the dead, contemplating, but there would be no meaning to it if they came back as mindless, soulless creatures. Yes, that's the problem. Eren affirmed, but continued, however, this city is surrounded by a powerful barrier. Which made me wonder, maybe their souls are still here, she said. At that, Rimuru had a flash of realization, his intentions were immediately picked up by the sage. Report. The souls of the dead normally disperse and vanish, however, under the two barriers, they may retain their shape. The probability is 3.14%. 3.14% probability. Pi. He though, that isn't low. Greater than 3%. I will take it. A wide grin made its way to his face. If I become a demon lord, but...
Eren. You realize you basically told me to become a demon lord, don't you? He said with some concern.
Eren smiled sheepishly. Ah, yeah, see, the truth is my name is Arian Grimwalden. I hail from Thalian royalty. Say what? Rimuru shouted, are you kidding me? He looked over at the other two, about to ask. Hey, no. Kaval said, sounding amused, we're just her bodyguards. Letting her go adventuring on her own was too dangerous. Huh. Eren, Arian Rimuru decided to just stick with Eren, looked over at Kaval, unamused, you say that, but traveling with Kaval is more dangerous than anything, she joked. Guido tried to suppress his laughter while Kaval went red. Hey, it's not my fault. I just, you know, it's bad luck. He tried to defend himself. Rimuru watched them bicker and had to smile a little. Royalty or bodyguards or adventurers, they were still the same. Anyways, Rimuru, Eren said, if you become a demon lord, my involvement will quickly be discovered. Only a few people in Thalian know that story, she said with some regret. I'll probably be taken back home, but until then. You don't need to say anything more. He interrupted her, you three are always welcomed here, he told them with a warm smile. The three smiled back. He turned back to look at Xian and the others. I wonder, can I really become a demon lord? Affirmative. Individual Rimuru Tempest has already gained the demon lord seed, Great Sage reported casually. What does that mean? Rimuru asked. Answer. The presence or absence of a demon lord seed indicates if an individual meets the requirements to awaken as a true demon lord. It said you gained the seed when you devoured the orc lord. If you fulfill the additional conditions, you will evolve into a demon lord. Really? What are the conditions? Answer. Based on the fairy tale, the seeds needs nutrition to bud. The nutrition, in this case, are sacrificed human souls, approximately 10,000. Human souls. Meaning, I have to kill 10,000 people, and absorb their souls. He asked. He also realized that the though did not revolt or disgust him as much or at all as it would have when he was human. Yes. However, as long as it is by your will, the task may be delegated to others. Even hearing that, however, Rimuru decided that he would not allow it. It was his decisions informed by his previous human life that had led to the catastrophe before him. Whatever else, he would settle it with his own hand, just like she did. Sir. Rimuru's thoughts were interrupted by a thought message from Soe. I have a report. Go ahead, Soe. Sir, me and my people have identified the ones maintaining the barrier. There are 4 places, heavily guarded, with what appear to be large focusing crystals used to prop up the barrier. Also, I have met up with Lady Trainee. The combined armies of Falmouth and the Holy Church are marching into out territory. Approximately 20,000 of them. Single quote. I see. Perfect. Rimuru said after a brief pause, just the right amount, and then some, he said with joy. Soe, for now continue to monitor and report on the enemy camps. I will bring you up to speed a bit later. Understood. The ogre said, then cut off the connection. As he did so, Rimuru looked up at the existing 2 barriers. Now, let's see. Great Sage. Report. Analysis of the anti-magic field completed.
It can now safely be dispelled. However, the secondary outer barrier will be exceedingly more difficult. Shall I dispel the anti-magic field? It asked. No, not yet. He said, we still need it. If it's gone, their souls may vanish. In fact, we need some insurance. He thought and began manifesting some energy in his hand. A while later, the ball of energy expanded in all directions, engulfing the city just like the barriers. All across the city, the presence of the new field brought panic in people. However, they were quickly calmed down by a though message by Rimuru. Attention, this is Rimuru speaking. He announced, do not be alarmed by the new barrier, it is my own doing. Every counselor and official, please meet up in my office, right now. As he finished transmitting, he turned back to Ren and her group. You guys come with me. I'd like you to tell everyone the story too, but first, I have someone to deal with. Taking one good look at the dead, he moved away, resolved to see his plan through. Sitting at his desk, Rimuru looked with some disinterest as Majulin was brought in and seated across from him. Of course, Yom and Grucius came along and were protectively sitting near her. Like before, the Majin woman did not look scared or distressed, just resigned. He decided that he would get straight to the point. Majulin, was it? I would like you to tell me your side of events, he told her calmly. The woman simply nodded. As you wish, she said, then began her explanation. As you say, my name is Majulin. I am a follower of Demon Lord Clayman, one of his 5 fingers, the index finger. Clayman, he though the name with anger, he remembered how Milam had explained to him that he, along with herself and Carrion, were supporting Gelmid on the Orc Lord project. She had also told him he may have been behind Charybdis, but he ignored it at the time due to lack of evidence. From the other things Milam said, he did not have a good impression of the Demon Lord. My mission was to spy on Tempest. I infiltrated Yom's group to gain access to the city, she said as Yom looked at her, shocked. Later, Clayman had me raise the anti-magic field for him. I see. Rimuru said thoughtfully, are you still giving him reports? He asked. She shook her head. No. In this anti-magic field, I too am incapable of magic. How were you planning to leave, though? He asked. I did not. She answered almost immediately. So Clayman abandoned you? He asked, his opinion of the Demon Lord getting lower by the second. Clayman is known as the marionette master, he manipulates even his followers like puppets. To him, we are nothing but tools to be discarded when no longer useful. Why would you follow someone like that? Ah. She said, sounding almost amused, if only. I was originally a human witch. Long ago, I was persecuted and hid in a secluded forests, where I lived for several hundred years. Alone, with no friends or family, I spent all my time researching magic. Then, when my life was seemingly at an end, he appeared. He said he would give me eternal youth if I served him. Hey. I suppose a naive woman living alone in the woods was a laughably easy target for him. And he kept his word? Rimuru asked curious. Yes, I suppose he did, but in exchange, I lost my freedom. You see, he used a special ritual, marionette heart. It replaced my original heart with a fake, which transforms a human into a Majin, but also gives him complete control over your life, or death.
So he literally has complete control over your right to live. How despicable, he said as he got up and rounded the office. So because you refused to accept your own death, you have now condemned my people to die, is that it? He asked in anger. Hey boss, wait Yong tried to protest, but Benimaru quickly shot him down with a murderous look. Alright then, tell me this, what is Clayman's real reason for doing all this? He asked the woman, who looked to contemplate her words before speaking. Clayman doesn't tell his puppets anything, she said. I presume, based on the tidbits he said, that he intended to foment a war between you and Falmouth. For what reason, I can't tell. So you don't actually know anything, guess you have no further use then, he said in a dark tone.
Hey boss, what are you doing? Yam said in a slight panic. Ignoring him, Rimuru looked straight at Mulin. Mulin, I will need you to die. He told his verdict. Even then, she did not flinch, just accepted her fate.
Wait, boss, Yong tried to protest, but Grusius shut him up with a shove. Quit wasting your time, Yong, the beastman said as he marched forward, his eyes say he's serious. And began to transform. In a split second, he had turned into a large, white-haired wolf man, ready to pounce. Stop gawking and get Majulin out of here. He shouted and slashed at Benimaru, who had placed himself between him and Rimuru. The ogre easily blocked the lichen and twisted his arm until he was pinned on the floor. Rimuru walked past them, casually. Determined, Yong grabbed Majulin's arm and prepared to drag her to safety. Quick. He told her, let's get out of, but was interrupted when she grabbed his face and pulled him down for a kiss. Too stunned to say anything, he stood there as she broke the contact. I love you, Yong, she told him with a smile. In all the time I have lived, you're the only one that I ever fell in love with. She let go of his face and took a step back. Goodbye and try not to get led astray by other wicked women. Before he could say anything, Yong was immobilized by a cocoon of Rimuru's thread magic. He fell to the floor, unable to do anything but scream. I see that you're ready, Rimuru said to Majulin as he approached her, ignoring Yong's desperate screams. With a hard thrust in her chest, it was over. Silence fell over the room. Majulin said as she tried to process the situation. She looked down at where Rimuru had hit her, but saw no blood or anything. Looks like the operation was a success, Rimuru said cheerfully, looking at his handiwork. What? But, how am I not dead? Majulin asked. Oh, you were dead, for about 3 seconds. Rimuru answered with a loop-side grin. Rimuru released Yong, who was looking both confused and concerned. Hua. Boss, what the hell is going on? He screamed at Rimuru, who shushed him. Not losing his grin, he opened his palm to show them what he had done. It was a broken crystal. This, Rimuru told his confused audience, is Clayman's fake heart he put in Majulin. It's actually a listening device. At their confused glances, he continued, earlier, when I installed a third barrier, I detected an encoded signal. The signal was coming from this thing. Majulin, he looked at the woman, who had a look of realization. He was spying on you. Those regular reports were probably just a ruse to keep you from realizing it. Spying on me, she said, baffled. But, what is this beating in my chest? I made you a new artificial heart based on Clayman's. Of course, it's curse-free. He explained, you're free. Clayman has no more power over you, he told her. Hearing that, the Majin began to cry, the relief too much to handle. Yong took to comforting her. Grusius, meanwhile, was fuming, but there was nothing he could do. The woman had already said she had a thing for Yong. After letting them take their breath, he continued to explain to them his theory, namely that Yong was being used as a hostage to force her to do her bidding. Lord Rimuru, no amount of words can express my gratitude. Majulin said, if there's anything I can do. Oh, there is. Don't worry. I didn't just save you for free. He told her with a small smile. She nodded, so he decided to elaborate. I did it mostly because it would keep Yom in line. I have great plans for him. He looked over at the man in question, who was now picking a fight with Grusius over something the beastman said. He wasn't paying attention. He looked back to Majulin with a sad expression, but also. I know how you two feel, he told her. She looked a bit confused at his words, but decided not no pry. Now then, he said louder to get everyone's attention, with the spying taken care of, let's start the real meeting. A while later, the office was jammed-packed with people. The remaining ogres, Kaijin, Geld, Rigurd, Gobta, the hobgoblin lords, Yom, Brucius, Majulin and even the adventuring trio were all included. Looking at them with a serious expression, he told them, "Thank you for coming. I will get straight to the two main points of this meeting, our counterattack against Falmouth, and the revival of our fallen comrades." He told them. They all had a look on their face that said, "I knew it." Uren, he turned to the girl, who became somewhat uncomfortable as all the eyes in the room turned to her. "I ask you to tell them the story you shared with me." He said. Though somewhat reluctant, she nodded and began retelling the story of the dragon princess. As she was coming to a close, he could see several people around the room, mostly the magically adept ones like Shuna and Majulin, begin to get a hold of what he was going for. When Uren finished, the room remained silent for a while. "I see. Resurrecting the dead," Majulin said, astonished and curious. He supposed she was a witch who spent centuries researching magic. "Yes," he answered simply, "and the conditions for it to happen, though low, hinge on one factor: me becoming a demon lord." He let the gravity of his declaration sink in for a few moments, then continued, "Any objections?" The people in the room began to exchange glances. He guessed some of the monsters may be using telepathy to debate his words, but he decided against intruding. After a while, Rigurd spoke up. "My lord, we will follow you down whatever path you go," he said with conviction, "whatever that may lead us to." Almost everyone in the room nodded. It warmed his heart to know just how much they trusted him. Even when he declared something so absurd, they did not judge and simply trusted their lives in him. However, given the events of the past few days, he wasn't so sure how good it was, his feelings aside. With that in mind, he made a decision. "Guys, you know, I have something to say. I, myself, was once human," he told them. They all looked a bit confused at him, and so he decided to tell them the truth, about his previous life, his death and reincarnation, and more importantly. "So you see," he continued, "because I was human, I wanted to continue interacting with humans. When I made the rule, don't attack humans, it was with that selfish though in mind. I cannot take that back no matter how much I wish," he said sorrowfully, even ashamed, "but, believe me when I say that I never, ever wanted anyone to get hurt by that rule." He finished, bowing slightly to everyone in the room. "This really was he was about to say, fault, but was quickly interrupted. "Lord Rimuru, please raise your head." Rigurd shouted with concern, "We would never accept such a thing." He said. "Indeed, my lord," Shuna interjected, "we too were responsible for what transpired. We always depended on you too much, and the slaughter was the result of that. It is our burden too," she told him with a stern voice. "How pathetic I am," Benimaru muttered, "for my younger sister to say that before me. But she's right. We lost our will and faulted. I faulted, even though you left me in charge." "Wait a moment, Benimnaru," Rigur shouted, as head of security, "this is much more my fault." "No," Geld said with guilt in his voice, "I too should have kept a sharper eye on those who came down the road." One by one, everyone in the room began accusing themselves of something, trying to draw blame from him, or so he thought. Thinking more carefully, he realized it was just their sense of responsibility, something which he had tried very hard to nurture in them from day one. And now, here it was, bearing fruit. However, even that was because he was selfish. He tried saying as much but Hakuro interjected. "No, my lord, there is nothing wrong about being selfish." The old man sagely said, "What truly caused all this tragedy was our own weakness. Our negligence allowed that rabble to get away with this in our own home. Am I wrong?" He shouted at everyone, and they all nodded in agreement. Rimuru looked over in awe. He was honestly ready for them to hate him, even brand him a traitor and banish him, but no. "Selfishness if perfectly fine, my lord. You are our only true master, and it is our destiny to follow you down any path you chose." Rigurd assured him with a smile. "And you don't have a problem with a former human giving you orders?" he finally asked. "Huh, what does that have to do with anything?" Gobta asked, genuinely confused. Everyone in the room had to offer a small laugh at his straightforwardness. "Monster or human, you are our master, Sir Rimuru," Shuna said, "it doesn't matter to any of us." Single quote. I see. He finally relented. Looking around at his assembled companions, he realized his worries were baseless. They would, in fact, never abandon or cast him aside over something so meaningless. Even so, he swore in his heart that he would never fail them again. Yes, being selfish is fine, and this promise is for my sake too. Alright then, let's continue. Here's the plan. Wait, just one question. Kaijin interrupted. When all eyes were on him he continued, how are you going to go forward interacting with humans from now on? That. Rimuru said, having hoped to avoid that topic until later. He had an idea, but Rigard took initiative. I think we should continue interacting with them, he said. Yes, those humans attacked us, but we should not lump all humans into one category. Sir Mjalmile and the adventurers jumped right away to assist us any way they could. I think we should consider that, he finished. Everyone around seemed to agree, for the most part, and voiced their opinions as such. Yes, I agree. However, we will be much more cautious in the future. We will extend our hand in friendship and peace to those who do the same. To those who bare their fangs at us, we will respond in kind. Do we agree? Everyone nodded in approval. In that case, let's start. For the next few minutes, they discussed the main steps they would need to take in their mission. First, the humans outside maintaining the barrier would have to go. Then they, or more specifically himself, would need to obliterate the Falmouth army, not just to stop their advance but also to enable his ascension to Demon Lord. At the last part, everyone wanted to join him on the attack, but he refused. No, I will do this alone, he told them, ignoring any protest. I have good reason for it. In order to become a Demon Lord, I must be the one who kills them. It's the only way, he told them, leaving out how the sage informed him the task could be delegated. No need to let them know. He would be the one who would end them. That too was his selfish wish. But I leave the ones outside of town to you guys. Hakuro, Geld and the Goblin Riders, you guys take the west. Soe and his team will take the north. Gabaru and his men will take the south. Benimaru, I think you can handle the east by yourself. He relayed his orders to each of the teams, who had a look of pure determination on their faces. Finally, he turned to Shuna and Majulan. Once they are all taken care of, the barrier will go down. I want you to work together to form a new one, just in case, to keep the souls of our friends in place. Can you do that for me? Of course. Majulan said immediately, I will repay my debt in any way I can. Shuna nodded. Finally, with all the pieces in place, Rimuru and his subordinates began the counterattack. Taking one final look at the city as he exited the barrier, Rimuru grew two large bat wings from his back and, with newfound determination, flew off into the west, to intercept the army marching on them. He had complete faith in his people to do their part, all that was left was for him to do his. He flew at high speeds over the clouds. As he was wearing his replica mask, his presence was completely concealed. It took only about 15 minutes of travel until he spotted his enemy. Looking down from on high, he judged the army that had set up camp in a field and prepared to eliminate them. Trash, all of you, as he waited for the all-clear signal from the forces outside Tempest. He waited, and though about how he ended up where he was now. Perhaps if he had been more careful, he would not have needed to do what he was about to do, but it was too late to regret or even care. His heart was iced over, he simply did not have the desire or capacity to see the worms below as anything but trash to be disposed of. Lord Rimuru. Benimaru's voice rang out in his mind, we're finished on our end, all magical crystals generating the barrier have been destroyed. No casualty on our end. Understood. He answered back, go and help Shuna and Majulan in the town square. I will finish here shortly. And with that, he began gathering the energy needed for the task.
Thanks to Great Sage, he had devised a perfect method to eliminate them as quickly and as efficiently as possible. It was rather simple, but deadly, frighteningly so. It boiled down to using his water control to form large water lenses high up in the atmosphere, which would focus the light of the sun into an extremely thin beam. He would form smaller water droplets close to the ground to reflect and redirect the resulting beam of pure heat to whatever he deemed a target. The heat would instantly vaporize the droplets, but they required so little magic to form he could reform them over and over again at very high speeds. The only drawback was that it required sunlight to function, so it was useless during the night. Right now, however, was noon. Nothing stood between him and his goal. He finalized the spell, and aimed at the worms down below. You humans who invaded my territory, hurt my people, you must now pay for it with your lives, he shouted, though he doubted anyone below heard Megiddo. Instantly, numerous beams of sunlight were directed downwards to the droplets below, which shot them in all directions right in the middle of the camp. The effect was devastating. Several hundred soldiers instantly fell over dead, chests or heads pierced and burnt clean through. Armor was useless, as were magical barriers, since the beam itself was not magic but natural sunlight. Panic spread like wildfire through the camp as more and more beams rained down into their ranks, cutting them down like insects. It didn't matter at all who they were, old or young, malicious or not, strong or weak. They all suffered the same fate in a long but short nightmare. And he felt nothing.
Attention, Great Sage suddenly said, unique skill, Merciless, successfully acquired.
Merciless, he wondered as he continued to rain down death upon those below, but decided to leave it for later. Wonder how many I have to go. He thought to himself, not concerned at all that he was talking about how human lives he had snuffed out. Report. Over 2,500 enemies dead.
2,550. Great Sage reported. He decided to order it to report only when he had reached the required 10,000 souls, not that he would stop at just that, and had to steady himself as he realized that Megiddo was even more frightened than he had expected.
Even so, he continued. After what felt like hours, but could not have been more than 5 minutes, the sage reported he had almost reached the required amount. He continued. After a few more seconds, he turned his attention to a large, gaudy tent installed some distance from the center of the camp. Either some high-ranking general, or the king who was supposed to lead this force. He thought with contempt. When he saw a knight leave the tent, he didn't hesitate to put a beam straight through his temples. A second later, a few other figures strode out. A young-looking mage and 2 older men. One of them, dressed in expensive clothes, hastily walked to the knight, who had died so suddenly he was still standing, and patted the knight on the shoulder, causing him to fall over. The fancy-dressed man quickly stumbled away, looking even more terrified than he already was. He concluded either him or the other older man must be the king, and so he decided to introduce himself. Flying down to the 3, he landed with a thud. "Hello," he said, ignoring their looks of fear. "Is one of you Trash the king?" "You," the young mage began in a fearful voice, "are the lord of the monsters? You do not look like you're from this realm," he said as he got a good look at his Asian features. "Are you one of the other worlders that attacked Tempest?" he asked. "No," the mage answered, "my mind and soul are of this world." "Whatever," he grumbled, "you're an enemy either way." And with no more words or warning put 2 beams through his heart and brain. As he fell over, dead, Rimuru marched over to the 2 other figures. "Well?" he asked, impatient. The bearded, fancy-dressed one stepped forward after looking to contemplate his words. Based on how the other looked more like a priest, he concluded that the fancy one indeed must have been the king.
"Why? You violate proper manners, monster," the man said in a haughty voice. Rimuru had to quickly replay his words in his mind to make sure he heard right. "Kneel before me, King Edmaris or Falmouth. For I wish," and decided then and there to teach the maggot a lesson of proper manners, by instantly cutting off one of his arms, though he sealed off the wound with some flame as well to keep him from bleeding out. The idiot cried out in pain and fell to his knees, clutching his stump. "You there, Baldy?" He turned to the other guy. "Is this man really the king, or just a double? Tell me," he ordered. The priests looked ready to soil his pants, stuttering for a few seconds. Yes, he is, as an archbishop of the Western Holy Church, I vouch for it," he said with a panicked voice. Unlike the idiot on the ground, he seemed to have instantly realized their situation. My name is Rahim. I hold great authority with the church," he continued, dropping down to his knees and prostrating himself. "Please spare my life. I can vouch to anyone that you—" Silence. He decided to interrupt his pathetic pleading. Since he did seem to be very high up, he decided to keep him alive for now. "Do not move from your place. And you." He turned to the king, who was looking up at him with absolute horror in his eyes. "I will hear you out, but know that I am not some pushover."
Now, I permit you to speak, he said, putting as much malice in his words and aura as he could. This is a misunderstanding, the king said. I came to you to form friendly relations. My army was only for my protection, I swear. You say that, but your scouts started a fight and killed many of my subjects, Rimuru shot back. No, wait please. It was those other worders, not me, he shouted. They acted foolishly, without my consent. I was fooled too. And the church, as well. They hate monsters, and so, I was only trying to prove you could be trusted. And, he asked the obvious liar, are you willing to form friendly relations now? Of course, the king bellowed in what sounded like relief. Of course. My nation is much richer than Bloomond. In fact, his voice began creeping back to his previous haughtiness. You should be grateful that. Enough. Rimuru ordered, shooting him a dark look. He instantly shut up in fear. I heard enough. We will talk later. For now, he said as he turned around, I will end it all. Attention. Unique skill Merciless Analyze. Use Merciless? Great Sage asked. He had only one thing to say, yes. And so, everyone remaining in the camp but the king and the archbishop died. Not simply killed by some magic. No, Merciless had affected everyone who had lost all hope and begged for their lives. Instead, Merciless had ripped their souls straight out of their bodies, ending them all in a single instant. Immediately, Rimuru could feel all those souls being absorbed. A great surge of power emanated from him as he turned back to the pathetic king, who, upon witnessing the scene, had literally soiled himself in fear. Rayheim had already fainted. It's too bad. I really wanted to be friendly, but you people forced my hand, and now, he said as he took the mask off and looked the man straight in the eyes, you will suffer the consequences. Without saying another word, the king rolled his eyes back and fainted. Notice. Individual Rimuru Tempest has completed the Demon Lord Harvest. A voice like the Great Sage rang out, but he realized it wasn't his skill. No, this was the voice of the world announcing to everyone who could hear his achievement, now preparing evolution to Demon Lord. Immediately as the voice said that, he could feel his consciousness fading. Crap. He thought through the sudden haze, I'm feeling dizzy. He turned around to the two unconscious prisoners, and noticed something strange. Namely, that the body of the mage he had shot was missing. Notice. One survivor detected through magic sense, the Great Sage reported. However, he could not even stand up straight and fell down. I can't chase down some survivor in this state. He forced all his willpower to keep himself awake for a little while longer, and I sure as hell can't fall asleep around them. What to do? He had an idea. Ranga, he shouted. Immediately, the wolf jumped out of his shadow and got close to lean on him. I will need you to take me back to Tempest. And those two, he said, and began channeling some magic in his hand. Barley keeping himself from fainting, he cast a summoning spell. Come forth, demons, he chanted, I seek your services. I offer the bodies of my prey. A magical array appeared on the ground, and in a gust of wind all the dead bodies vanished. 3 demons appeared in front of him, all those bodies, and I got just 3. Well, I guess I did suck out their souls. Khehe, what a familiar sensation. The demon in the middle said, the birth of a demon lord. Ah, yes. Rimuru said, fighting off the darkness. There is at least one survivor around. Capture them and bring them to my city. When you get there, do what Ranga says. Of course. The demon said with joy in his voice, I accept this great honor. But may I ask that we continue to serve after our task is done? He said, kneeling down. We'll talk later. Prove you're useful. Yes, master. Be at ease and consider it done. The demon said. Then, no longer able to withstand the darkness, Rimuru's mind slipped. Be at ease, master. Though he could hear a voice say, I will handle the rest. Benimaru, Shuna, Mulan and the others were waiting in the town square for several minutes, waiting for news from their master. Shuna and Mulan managed to successfully cast another barrier after the other one was taken down, and now all they could do was wait along with the entire city, holding their breath. Then. Notice. Individual Rimuru Tempest has completed the Demon Lord Harvest. The voice of the world rang out for all to hear, now preparing evolution to Demon Lord. When it is completed, all affiliated monsters will be granted gifts. The sudden words shocked everyone at first, most of which never imagined they would ever hear it in their lives, but that was quickly filled with overwhelming joy at their master's success. Almost the entire city began kneeling, praying for their master. Benemeru, fighting through his own desire to pray, however, took charge. "Steel yourselves. Our master is victorious," he shouted at everyone. "His return is imminent. Until he is finished, we must use our bodies and souls to protect him." Everyone around nodded with determination.
Some time passed as everyone waited, when suddenly someone shouted, "Clear the way. Lord Rimuru has returned." The large form of Ranga made its way down the main street, stopping only in front of Benimaru and Shuna in the town square. Gently, he placed the slime form of their master down.
"I must return to the town's entrance," Ranga said as Shuna picked the slime up. "Master ordered me to keep watch for something." Shuna and Benimaru exchanged a glance. "Grucius, Yam, could you escort Ranga?" Shuna said. The two, though hesitant, quickly followed the wolf. Shuna moved to gently place their master on a pedestal they had prepared beforehand, then. "Attention! Demon Lord evolution commencing," the voice of the world said. As they heard that, everyone that was named by Rimuru began feeling weak and sleepy. Weaker monsters simply fell over, sleeping, while the higher ones managed to hold on for a few more seconds. "No, we can't," Shuna muttered as she fought off the drowsiness. Realizing that she could not, she turned to Mulan and fell asleep. Benimaru looked over at her too but didn't manage to speak before falling asleep. Soon, only Mulan and the three adventurers remained conscious in the square. And then an angel descended upon Tempest. It was dark. Darker than he had ever experienced, even that time he had died. Even so, it felt oddly comforting. He could not feel his body or anything at all. It was simply stillness. Then he heard a voice say evolution from slime to demon slime successful. All physical abilities greatly improved, though it said that he could not concentrate enough to truly register its meaning. Acquisition of new skills and resistances, successful. Though he could see something in the distance. A faint form through the darkness, silhouetted against the empty. He tried reaching out. Evolution process completed. Notice. Attempting to evolve Great Sage. Failed. 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 He could almost reach the form. Offering skilled degenerate as sacrifice. Successful. Unique skill Great Sage evolving to Wisdom Lord Raphael. The form took shape and turned to smile at him. And so, he woke up. He could feel himself being held, though magic sense was temporary off. He willed it back on, and took a good look around. "Ah, good morning Xian. You're back," he said to the ogress holding him. He looked around and saw they were on the porch of his private house. "You're awake, Lord Rimuru," she excitedly said. Gently, she placed him down onto the porch itself. "And not just me," she said, motioning to the large crowd of people gathered there. They all cheered as he looked over them. Finally, he could feel a burden lifting off of his soul. However, there were still many things left to do, one of which was even more personal. "All right, Milam. I'll be coming soon. Just you wait." A long distance away, around the same time, the destroyer was sitting in her room in Fry's castle, talking with the queen about small nothings, when suddenly she shot up. Ignoring the harpy, she focused all her senses in the direction of Tempest. She grinned, sending a shiver down the harpy's spine.